We've uploaded the pattern into the chat, but we will continue to do so throughout the class. Definitely feel free to ask questions. If you want to kind of, get any advice or tips or tricks, that's what it's here for. So just put those in the chat, and Allie will be helping talk us through that with Tamara today. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell us where you guys are from. We can't wait to hear where all you're watching today.
Hey everybody, this is Tamara from Moogly. Thank you so much for joining me today. As she was saying, today we're going to be making the Knit Waves blanket. So if you didn't get an email with that PDF, check the chat. I know they're posting the link there. It'll look something like this, although my copy is in black and white because I'm running out of printer ink, but it still does the job, right? Now, the nice thing I love about printing out patterns like this in black and white is it lets me do a little bit more play around with the colors. I don't have to stick with the colors that I recommended. If you look at the pattern, you'll see it recommends Wandering Blue and Cuddly Cloud, but of course you can use whatever beautiful colors you want to use. Specifically, Bernat Baby Velvet. This is such a gorgeous yarn. If you guys haven't had a chance to use this one yet, it's really, really gorgeous. And you can get it at Michael's, and you can see if I hold it up here to the camera, kind of get my head around so I can see what I'm showing you here. It's got this really, really gorgeous velvety texture. It's a chenille style yarn, which means it's not plied, it's not twisted. It's just this really gorgeous velvety squish. So it's really fun to work with, and it makes some really gorgeous things. So like I said, today we're going to work on the Knit Waves blanket. It is rated easy. I would recommend that you have some basic skills, that you know how to cast on, that you know how to knit, that you know how to purl, and that you know how to cast off. That said, I know anytime I run into knitting trouble, I turn to videos like this, other videos. If there's a specific stitch that you don't know, there's always a video out there for it. So you can always learn that one extra stitch you need to know to make the pattern. So the more next skills, I would say, besides just knitting and purling, casting on and casting off, that you would need for this pattern are knit two together and yarn over. But they're very simple, and I will definitely be showing them to you today. So one thing I want to point out, obviously I'm not going to demonstrate a full-size blanket. Wouldn't be able to get it all on camera. It would take way too long, way more than an hour to knit a whole blanket. So I'm just going to be knitting a little swatch for you today. What I'm going to be knitting is 35 stitches wide. And if you look at the written pattern, again, the link should be in the chat. There is, right at the beginning of the instructions, it tells you the multiple, which is so great. This pattern has a multiple of 13 stitches plus 9. That lets us both make a gauge swatch, make a practice swatch, and it lets us really make this blanket any size we want. So we can take that initial cast on, which is 139 stitches, and we can just add or subtract any multiple of 13 to make that as wide or as narrow as we want. So while this is, let's see, how big is this blanket? In its full size, it's 36 inches wide and 40 inches long. So really more of a baby blanket or throw size. But if you wanted to make this into a great big queen size or king size, obviously you need more yarn, but you can make this as big or as small as you'd like. So let's go ahead and get started making our Knit Waves blanket. We want to go ahead and go to the overhead camera, and I will show you how to get started here. All right, now here you can see, again, this is the written pattern, and I'm sorry if it's a little blurry. We've had a little bit of bandwidth issues today, but we're working through it. So hopefully if you can kind of see on your own written pattern, right around here has that stitch multiple, and then right over here, it's just a 2-row stripe pattern once you get past the first 8 rows. So let's go ahead and set that aside, and I'm going to pull up my yarn here. Now, casting on for knitting can be done in lots of different ways, and this pattern doesn't specify a particular cast on. So when I made my larger swatch that I'll be switching to here in a little bit, I used the long tail cast on for this. But if you are a complete beginner and you haven't tried different cast on methods before, let me find the end of the yarn here. There we go. And I'm going to show you one of the easier cast ons for true beginners. All you really need to do is flip your yarn over like that and slip that on your needle, like so, okay? Actually, let me try that again here. We're going to get it on the needle. There we go, like so. We want to have the tail end above our working yarn, so that secures it right there. Then you just keep adding those loops. right on our hook, or excuse me, right on our needle. I often crochet. I don't knit as much, so I'll have to switch my terms here. But we just want to slide loops, twisted loops, onto our needle. And that is a very, very simple cast on. So if you're a beginner knitter, that's the one you may want to use. If you're a more advanced knitter, you know, other cast-ons, you have your own favorite, you can do that however you like. So as I said, for the full size pattern, you would need 139 stitches. For our little swatch, we're just going to start with 35. So go ahead and however you like to do it, you'll want to get 35 stitches on your needles. Now this pattern calls for a, oop, mine fell on the floor here. Let me grab it real quick. This pattern calls for a US 7 4.5 millimeter hook. Now, needles, see? Told you, I'm having trouble switching to the knitting terminology here. But it calls for that size of knitting needles. You will want to possibly use a larger needle for the first row if you find that your cast on tends to be a little tight. But that's okay. And then switch over to the recommended needle size for the rest, however you like to do it. Like I said, just take your time and get 35 stitches on your needle. I know it's a little blurry. I'm sorry about that. I wish I could get it to focus a little better. Let me see. Holding it up helps at all? No. I don't know. How's it looking at your end, guys? Allie, can you see it okay?
It's a little blurry right now.
Yeah. It is too. That darn bandwidth is getting us real bad right now, isn't it?
Would you like to try the front-facing camera for a second?
Yeah, we can try that. Okay, well, I can hold it up here, right there. So like I say, we're just getting our stitches on the needle, not hook, needle right now. So like I said, just usually take your time, get up to 35, and then we'll be ready to start our first few rows here. All right, so I'm gonna say that I have 35 stitches on the needle. I'm going to be switching over to my swatch to do the pattern rows. So for the sake of moving on, we're going to go on here. Now the first 8 rows of this pattern are just knit and garter stitch. So if you're not familiar with that term, garter stitch just means you just knit every row. You don't have to worry about any purling for these first 8 rows. And if you have trouble counting your rows, I do recommend either a piece of scrap paper and a pen or pencil, or you know, you can purchase obviously stitch counters in places, but you know, pen and paper work fine. So basically, we're just going to put our needle under our stitches there and knit across for the first 8 rows. So we just knit across and then turn and knit again. Now right here, this is the throwing style of knitting where I insert my needle, then yarn over and pull it through like that. There's also the continental knitting here. You can hold it in your left hand, whichever version you prefer is totally fine. But like I say, we're just going to knit these first 8 rows, and I'm not going to knit across 8 rows. That would probably take us nearly the whole hour, but I'll do a little bit here.
Hey,
Yes,
Tamara,
Allie?
I think, can we switch to your face camera?
Absolutely. Absolutely we can. Hi, guys.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
Yeah, I think it's just a little hard to see right now.
Gosh, yeah. Okay. Well, let me try and hold it up here in front of the camera, the front-facing camera, a little better here. Let's see. So basically, I'm going to try and turn it around here. The joys of live, right? We're going to just insert our needle in each stitch, yarn over, and pull it through. I'm sorry. I know that looks terrible. I can't really get my hands to turn around on the wrist like that. But like I say, hopefully you've got some basic knitting skills and you just knit across. There are lots of really great close-up, nice and clear, good bandwidth videos of knitting, but we're just going to knit the first 8 rows.
Hey, Tamara, so Lance wants to know if they could use like not circulars, so straight needles for the blanket. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say, probably due to the width of the blanket, the length of needle you would need is going to be really hard to work with.
Right. If you're making this little swatch, if you just want to practice the swatch, I think you could do that on straight needles, no problem. you know, the 35 stitches, but for making the full size blanket, yeah, you'd probably want to go ahead and invest in some cable needles. Those would have to be really long needles. And honestly, even if you could get long enough needles, long enough straights where you could fit the whole blanket on them, it would be so heavy because you'd be lifting the weight of that blanket on the needles with every stitch. I think it would really wear you out. But like I said, if you want to go ahead and try the swatch with the 35 stitches with straights, I think that would work fine. Be a good way to practice it, see if you like it. And if you really wanted to make the whole thing on straights, I guess you could do it in 35 stitch strips and then sew them together. That might be fun too.
Jenna just wanted you to, just had a question on what we're
Yes.
working on right now. And I believe
Yes.
we're just doing a row of garter stitch.
Right now we're just doing a row of garter stitch for the knit stripes blanket here, or the knit waves blanket, excuse me. If you look at the instructions, which I won't try and hold up for you because I know they're blurry. The first thing we do is cast on 139 stitches, and then we work back and forth for 8 rows of knitting. So garter stitch, just knit back and forth for 8 rows. I do want to point out, it says the first row is the right side. So what I like to do is put a crochet style stitch marker on the right side of my work. And the reason I say a crochet style stitch marker is because for those who do knit and don't crochet, you may not know this. Let me pull one up here. The crochet style stitch markers open up. They have, they're more like little safety pins. And so that is great when you want to mark something. So if you don't have that, you could use a stitch holder, but you want something that opens up. You don't want to mark it with a knitting stitch marker that doesn't open up and then it's stuck in your work forever. So little tip there. I like to have both kinds of stitch markers on hand, no matter what kind of project I'm working on, because they're handy. So basically, yeah, we just knit across back and forth for 8 rows. Once you've got those 8 rows made, then it's time to switch to the more interesting stitch pattern. And that's what I really want to get into for you today. Knitting back and forth, it's just knit stitches, it's just garter stitch. That part's easy. So I'm going to set that aside here. And then let's talk about when we get into the pattern itself. This is just my little 35 stitch wide swatch. You can see I've changed colors already once. And there's that little stitch marker. I only did 2 rows of garter stitch here because, again, I'm just making a quick swatch to try the pattern and practice it. But there's that stitch marker that marks the front. Now, once I got going in this little ways, it was easy to see which one was the front for me. So let me go ahead and explain why that is. Again, for those who are new at knitting, you can see this side has more of the flat, straight stitches, the V's that we associate with knitting. If I turn it around to the back, or the wrong side of the work here, hopefully you can see it's a little bumpier, a little knobblier, and that's the opposite side. When we're doing garter stitch, all the rows sort of look like this on each side, but once we get into the blanket itself, that is the wrong side of the work. So again, I don't have, you know, the full size length of cable needles here for my swatch. So if you don't have the full length swatch, you can still make the swatch with either straights or a shorter cable. So let me go ahead. I'm going to trying to think the best way to show this. Sorry, the joy of lives, right? Let me think. If we...
Tamara, actually, your overhead camera does look okay right now.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Everybody, could you let us know in chat if the overhead camera is clear for you right now? Because it looks clear for me.
I think it might be working. Yay!
Yes,
Oh, good.
everyone says it's working. Awesome.
Phew. All right, now we can really dive into those pattern rows. Let's get through them while it looks good. So pattern row 1, it's going to be, like I say, just a 2-row repeat, row 1, row 2, row 1, row 2. So let's see, we've got right there, our first stitch. We are going to start by knitting the first 4 stitches. So again, whatever style of knitting you prefer is totally fine. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you're following along on the written instructions, the next thing you'll see is the asterisk. That begins our repeat. So that's the section we'll do over and over again until we get close to the end of our row. With our little 35 stitch swatch, that's only going to be 2 repeats. The 2 repeats of 13 plus 9 extra. Again, you can find that information on the written pattern. So let's go ahead and begin that repeat. We begin with knit 1, just as we've been doing so far. Then we yarn over, and when you yarn over in knitting, you want to bring the yarn from underneath up in front of the needle. So you don't want to do it this way. You don't want to come over the needle. That's the way you would do it in crochet. But if you're knitting, you want to come from underneath and over the needle this way. And that's all yarn over is. You just lay your yarn right over the needle. Effectively, it creates a new stitch there. And then you just go right back to your pattern. So the next thing we do is knit 4 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we knit 2 together twice. So I'm going to pull this up even a little bit closer here to the camera so you can see it a little easier. What I want to do is insert this hook, or excuse me, that needle under both of these first 2 loops here. So just as I would to knit, go under the one and then under the second one, right under both of them, right in order there. Then I can complete my knit stitch just as I normally would. But I've worked those 2 stitches off into 1. So effectively that's a decrease. So let's do that again. We put both of those loops on the needle there, yarn over, and pull it through. And that's all there is to knit 2 together. So now you'll do 4 more knit stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then to finish our repeat, we just yarn over 1 more time. I like to just kind of use my finger to hold that right down there so I'm ready to begin my repeat again. So when we finish that repeat, we just go right back to the beginning of that asterisk. So the next thing we do is knit 1, yarn over again, then knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then we knit 2 together twice. So remember, we just go under both of those loops with our needle, yarn over, and pull it through. And then we do it again, go under both of those loops with our needle, yarn over, and pull through. Then 4 more knit stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we yarn over again because that's what finishes that repeat. And then we would start the repeat again if we were making the full-size blanket. You just go right back to that asterisk and start again. When you get to the end of your blanket, when you finish that last repeat, you should have 5, I'll pull them apart there so we can see them, 5 stitches left on your needle there. So we just knit each one of those last 5 stitches, and that is how you make row 1. So every time you yarn over, effectively you are increasing, you're adding another stitch, and every time you knit 2 together, you are decreasing another stitch. So that keeps our total stitch count even. Remember, we knit 2 together 4 times and we yarned over 4 times. So we still have 35 stitches on our needles. And if I lay it out here a little bit flatter, right there is where I've got the knit stitch in between the yarn overs, and that sort of creates the peak in our chevron shape, if you will. And then down here in the valley, that's where we've got our 2 decreases. So those increases sort of create the peaks of the chevron, and the decreases create the lowest parts, the valleys. So that's how we do row 1, and I will be doing that again here, but now we've got to switch to row 2. We're going to turn and work back the other way. And row 2 begins again with 4 knit stitches. So we just want to go right on in there and make our 4 knit stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I did see a question about, do you need to knit loose? And I think you should knit this pattern however it feels comfortable for you. If you find that your stitches are a little too tight to be comfortable on the needles, go ahead and move up a needle size if you want to. This is a blanket. It's not a sweater. If it's off an inch or so, you know, as long as it's still cozy and warm, right? So we've got our 4 knit stitches there. To continue with row 2, we're going to purl. So I need to move my yarn to the front, and then we're just going to purl all the way across this row until we get to those last 4 stitches, and then we'll knit those last 4 stitches. This is what creates that really great border. And in fact, on my swatch right here, you can see, and I went ahead and left this so I could show you guys, right there is what happens if you forget to knit those last 4 stitches. It'll become smooth in the front if you purl all the way across. So you want to make sure to knit those last 4 stitches. If you find that you're having trouble stopping yourself and you purl all the way across and then you turn and you start working again and you say, oh no, I didn't knit those last 4 stitches. What I would recommend is picking up, this is where you want the knitted stitch markers, and you can use these at either end right before or after those last 4 stitches. So basically you'd want to put one right there before those last 4 stitches. And if you wanted to, you could put one right here after these 4 stitches, just to help remind you that you're going to need to switch on these purl rows, these number 2 rows, that you're going to want to switch back to knitting so you don't accidentally put that in the wrong spot. So to purl, like I say, hopefully you know how to do this, but if you don't, we're just putting our needle in front of the other needle. Then we yarn over again and pull that loop through. So we insert our needle, yarn over, and pull that one on off the needle. So like I say, we're just going to continue purling on across until we get to those last 4 stitches. Did we have any other questions, Allie, while I'm purling away?
Yeah, so there were some questions about worming, and I know that we've had some discussions about that.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about what someone might see if their yarn starts to worm, and kind of if you have any tips on preventing that?
Well, honestly, I do actually like to work a little bit tighter with this yarn in general. I do find that that tends to help prevent it a little bit. Just, you know, the loops are a little bit tighter, a little bit smaller, therefore. So I wouldn't necessarily go up too much. Like I said, if your stitches are too tight, if you just have a tight gauge, that's one thing. But in terms of just playing with this yarn, I tend to stick to the recommended or smaller hook and needle sizes. I find that that does help. Another thing you can do is, you know, anytime you've got a crochet or knit project at the end, the yarn isn't necessarily where it wants to be. Blocking can do a lot to help a lot of projects, can really even out your stitches and just kind of, you know, pull everything into where it needs to be. So don't be afraid to get in there with maybe a smaller crochet hook or just your fingers, and sort of give those loops a tug and see if you can't pull it back down into position. If you think about, I think we've all had a purchase sweater that's gotten a snag in it. Sometimes you need to go to the back and give it a little tug. Same thing can happen to our handmade projects, unfortunately. It'd be great if they were snag proof, right? So here I am. I've worked all the way across with my purls. I've got just those last 4 stitches left there for row 2. So I'll go ahead and move my yarn to the back of my work again. And then I will just knit off those last 4 stitches. So row 2, very, very simple. Row 1 is the one with the pattern stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and start that again here so that we're off that last stitch there. There we are. So go ahead and straighten out my work. I was like, just sort of spread it out again, make sure everything looks good and I haven't missed anything. Make sure all my loops are facing the right direction. There we are. So we'll continue the Knit Waves blanket with row 1 again. Oh, looks like we might have lost our good bandwidth there, at least on my end. How does it look for you guys?
It got a little blurry for me, Tamara.
Yeah, it did. Bummer. Okay, well, gosh darn it. Joys of the internet. You never know what it's going to do. Well, should we go back to the forward-facing camera and we'll see if we can just talk our way through it a little bit, although talking is clearly an issue for me today. I hope you guys are doing well. I think I just haven't been talking to enough people lately. I've been in my house. All right, so let's go ahead and start row 1 again. And we're going to kind of talk our way through it here, and I'll hold it up as best I can. Unfortunately, I don't have reversible wrists. So we're going to start row 1 with 4 knit stitches. So just knit the first 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we are. We've got our 4 knit stitches. Then we're going to start our repeat again at the asterisk. So we knit 1. Yes?
Tamara, your hands actually came back in focus.
Oh, good. Okay, let's go. Well, it's good. Get it while the getting's good. Here we go. All right, we've got our first 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we knit the next one to begin our repeat. Yarn over. Remember to bring that from underneath the needle, then lay it over, then knit your next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Then we're going to knit 2 together twice. So we're going to insert our needle under 2 of the loops on the left needle. There we are. I'll kind of pull them apart there so you can see I've got 2 loops there that I've gone under, and just knit it off as you normally would. Very simple decrease. Do it again. Takes a minute sometimes. You got to really finagle through there. But like I said, I do like to work a little tighter with this yarn. There we are, and pull that off. So after we've made our 2 knit 2 togethers, then we're going to knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we just yarn over to finish our repeat. And we're ready to begin again at the asterisk. Knit 1, yarn over, knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it's time to knit 2 together again. So go under both of those loops with your needle, yarn over, pull through and pull it off the needles. Scooch those loops up there. Get the next 2 on there, yarn over, pull through and pull them off the needles. Then we just need to knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we yarn over and just knit those last 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we are. And that is
Tamara,
it. We're rolling. Yes.
we have 2 questions that came through. So Kelly K wants to know suggestions for circular knitting needles for a beginner: bamboo, plastic, or stainless steel.
Oh gosh, you know what? And I think this is probably a really personal preference. But I'm going to say for me, although I'm using metal knitting needles today. When I first began, I actually started off on some very inexpensive bamboo circulars and straights, for that matter, and DPNs. And I really liked it. Not only is it very affordable for beginners to start with something with bamboo, but it's a little grippier. The thing about the metal needles that I love now that I'm a more experienced knitter is that they are very slick and let it slide, you know, let the yarn slide back and forth really easily. But as a new knitter, having those loops slide off your needle, you don't want that to happen on accident, and it can happen on accident very easily. So anything that's a little grippier and helps you not take those loops off until you're ready to take them off, I find to be really helpful. So I do actually recommend, believe it or not, the more inexpensive bamboo type needles for beginners, just because they've got that extra grip. Once you feel really secure and you're not, you know, you're not still at throw it across the room stage with your knitting, you know, and it's not, the loops aren't falling off the hook, then I would go ahead and try out some of the slicker metal needles. But I really do like the grippier woods when you're first getting started, having that little bit of, I hate to call it roughness, you don't want a rough needle, but the wood is just that little bit extra grippy and it'll keep your loops from falling off. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. And then there's a question from Cindy on what other type of yarn would you recommend for this project?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not a fan of velvet, that's totally cool. I think this pattern would work beautifully for the majority of your inspirations yarns. I think if you wanted something that was a little easier care, maybe, not that this is difficult to care for, but I know I've got 3 kids and a dog. I love things that are a little bit more washable, a little more rough and ready, things that can get made into a playhouse or a tent or taken out in the yard. So if you wanted something like that, I am a huge fan of Red Heart with Love. It's super soft, comes in a bunch of colors. Love it for blankets. You could use Karen Simply Soft would be another one that has a lot of really beautiful colors. It's a blanket. So again, too, you could also change the weight. Red Heart Soft Essentials, I believe, is a bulky that I think would look really lovely in this. And with a thicker yarn and bigger needles, you're going to get a bigger blanket. But again, it's a blanket. Have fun with it. I think the possibilities with this really are endless. As long as you like the fabric that you're getting at the end, you can use the label recommended needle size. I think is probably going to be the best guide with this pattern. If you wanted to go up a little bit, you could. But yeah, I think that this pattern, as long as you like the fabric you're getting with it with that yarn and you like the look, then you're good to go. Why not, right? Have some fun with it. You could, go super high end, like something like a Peyton's Classic Wool, make, a real heirloom piece too, if you wanted to.
Awesome. Super helpful. And then there's just one other question here from Vivian. She wanted to know if you could add on stitches later after you start with the 35.
Just on that row. I think you wouldn't necessarily want to come back and add them. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to hold it up to the face camera. I don't think you'd want to come in and try and add them here. Because you've got this border here and everything. So I don't think you could take the swatch and turn it into a blanket as is. But for some reason, if you wanted to add stitches to a later row, you could, just by casting on more stitches. But unfortunately, no, you can't just take the swatch and miraculously turn it into a full-size blanket. That would be super cool. That would be really cool. Don't get me wrong. She could. That would be awesome. But alas, I think a lot more people would make their gauge swatches if you could. So
I
let's
certainly would.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'd all make our gauge swatches if we could just turn them into the project. That would be awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and start on side 2 again here. That's just knit 4 stitches, purl across, knit the last 4. So do we have any other questions while I do that? Because I can definitely answer questions while I do that part.
I don't see any other questions at the moment, but everybody, if you have any questions right now, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try and help you as best we can.
Yeah, so like I say, I've just knitted these first 4, so then I'm going to bring my yarn to the front here and purl the remainder until I get to the last 4, and then I'll knit those as well. So definitely a good time to just chat while we're purling away here. I think. So yeah, if you, like I say, stitch markers can be really helpful to set off that first 4 and last 4. I'm a huge fan of stitch markers for both crochet and knitting. I use them like crazy. If you wanted to, you could also use them, to set apart different sections of your repeats if you wanted to. You could put one after every repeat if that was helpful to you. Don't be afraid of them. Stitch markers are something that I know I actually came to relatively late in my yarn life. I kept thinking, nah, I'm good. I don't need them. I'm good. Oh my gosh, they are such a brain saver. I cannot recommend them highly enough. Big fan. All kinds, crochet, knitting, any kind you like, whatever you're doing, get some stitch markers. Don't be afraid to use them. If you don't have stitch markers, you can't get a hold of them right now, safety pins, a loop of opposite colored yarn, a different yarn, whatever you need. They can be a real lifesaver. So that's my stitch marker speech. I feel like I make it every video.
We do have a couple of questions that came through. So one, we did just want to note that this recording will be available to watch after the fact. And then there was another question about if there'll be more knit and crochet classes, and that's yes. We will have there's going to be a crochet class on Saturday, and another knit class next Thursday, and another crochet class next Saturday. So just check back on the schedule on Michael's /online classes, and we'll make sure to share that link. It's actually shared in the class, the chat here from Michael's. Yeah, and so there is another question about adding second colors. So I'm sure that we're going to touch on that. So I don't want to rush you to talk about that before you're ready. So
perfect time.
Just going to throw that out there that was the question that's coming up.
Yes, that is what I will do next. So once you've done, let me pull up the pattern again here. Now that we've actually got some clear video, hopefully. The straight pattern is basically with A, you work 20 rows, then with B, work 20 rows, 20 rows, 20 rows, 20 rows. Again, that said, this is a great opportunity to mix it up and make it your own. If you want to switch colors every 10 rows, every 2 rows, every 40 rows, not at all, totally up to you. This is, you know, you're making your own project. You want to be able to go ahead and make it your own. So besides color, you can choose the width of your stripes if you want. If you want to make it the recommended size, you just need to make sure you make the total number of rows, which is recommended to be 180 rows of the stripe pattern. And then we cap it all off with another 8 rows of the garter stitch, which again is just knitting back and forth across. So you can see by just knitting those garter rows, it does even out that bottom a little bit and presumably the top as well. You know, but then you've got that great chevron wave look in between. So when it's time to switch colors, obviously I haven't worked a full 20 rows, but again, that's okay. We're going to, let me pull up my next color here, which is unfortunately on my other set of needles. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that for now. There we are, and set those aside. There we are. Okay. So when you've got your new end of yarn ready here, we'll get that sort of set aside and available for us. I don't like to cut the first yarn until I've got the second one securely attached, and that's personal preference, but I've made enough mistakes in my life and I've regretted cutting the yarn too soon far too many times to do it beforehand now. So we'll just go ahead and throw that out there. So when you want to go ahead and change color, I like to do it here. You want to do it from the right side. So the side with your stitch marker, the side with the beautiful pattern that we've been following, the repeat. We're just going to go ahead and begin our first knit stitch there. Go ahead and insert your needle. And then I'm going to take the new yarn. I'm just going to yarn over with that. Just kind of loop it right over that needle and pull through the new color like so. And now I'm knitting with the new color. So it's a little loose and messy right there, right at the beginning. You can kind of see it's kind of a little bit of a mess, but I'm going to come back and take care of that in a minute. The first thing I want to do is knit a couple more of those stitches. And I know with our repeat, these first 4 stitches are just knit here for our little border. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Get those on there so that that's nice and secure and really worked in there. And I'll push my needles up a little bit so it won't come out. And then this is where I will go ahead and cut that yarn. In this case, the pink one that I've already been working with. Get my scissors up here. There we are. And then you've got your 2 ends here. See if I can pull this up here under the camera a little better. And if you just give these a little tug, you can see it pulls down really nicely and that whole stitch really straightens out. Now you've got these 2 ends hanging out here on the side that you will want to weave in when you're done with your project. In the meantime, what I like to do with my ends, you can kind of see I've already done it right down here where I switched colors before. I like to just go ahead and tie them in a really nice, pretty little bow. This keeps them from coming loose. It keeps my stitches from accidentally coming in undone. But if I've made a mistake and I have to pull my work out, it's not a big deal. I can just undo this bow, pull out my yarn, and reuse it. I don't have to worry about I've already woven in those ends and I need to come back and fix it later. So I just make sure those little ends there are out of the way, and then I can continue knitting with my new color. So I will make sure that is completely out of the way so I don't actually grab it with my new yarn. And we can, looks like we've got time to do row 1 here one more time together because I know that's probably the trickiest part of this pattern. So does that work for you, Allie, or was there a bunch of questions?
Nope, that works for us.
Okay, great. So we've got those first 4 stitches on the needle again. Then we're going to begin our repeat. Knit 1, find the yarn you're working with. There we go, new color. I was looking for the wrong one. There we go, knit 1. yarn over, knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to knit 2 together. So insert the needle under 2 loops, yarn over, pull through and pull those off. Insert the needles under the next 2, yarn over, pull through and pull off. Then we just knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull those stitches back onto my needle a little bit there. Then we yarn over, and that finishes our first repeat. So then we begin again at the asterisk. Knit 1, yarn over, knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, knit 2 together, knit 2 together again, knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, yarn over, and then we'd be ready to begin again. So that is just our repeat. Then we knit those last 5 stitches off and we're all done. Then we've got our opposite side where we just knit the first 4, purl across, and knit the last 4. So how are we doing? Any other questions? Oops, get that on there.
So there was just a question about if we have the finished blanket on hand right now to show, and we do not.
Unfortunately, no. I didn't have time to knit up the whole thing. I don't think I would have had quite enough yarn on hand, to be honest. But yeah, no. Knitting a blanket, we can come back to the forward-facing camera now if you want to. I feel like knitting a blanket is can be a really meditative experience. Knitting a blanket takes time. It just plain takes time, even a baby-sized blanket. So, you know, just take your time with it. Really get into it. Make sure that you use the stitch markers if you need to. But, you know, it's a real joy, and it can create a really beautiful piece. I think it's a really gorgeous pattern that you'll enjoy making. It is definitely a step up from the most basic skills. It's rated easy. I've shown you all the stitches, but you know, then you get to try some increases and decreases. So if all you've been doing up till now is purling and knitting, then this I think is a great next step pattern that creates a really classic look. That knit chevron, or crochet chevron for that matter, has been popular for ages and ages and will come around again and again, I'm sure. It's just a really beautiful stitch. So definitely give it a try. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions coming through.
Wow, let's see. What should we talk about next? Anything else? Let's see, what haven't we covered? Want to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 4. Yeah, so I guess we could maybe cover casting off. Would that be good?
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Off? There, it's again, the if I pull up the instructions, which unfortunately keep falling on the floor. Let me try this again. The instructions just say, so basically you continue in the stripe pattern every 20 rows in your stripes for 180 rows, or honestly, as long as you wanted. If you wanted a longer blanket, go ahead and add another stripe. I won't tell, it'll be fine. So you want to end, if you follow the instructions, on 20 rows of color A. So whatever color you started with is what you'll end on. And then after you've made that 20 rows with A, then you end with 8 more rows knit in the garter with that A. Then it just says cast off. And that means you get to use whatever form of casting off you like. There are probably as many versions of casting off as there are casting on. So if you already have a favorite, feel free to use that. It's whatever you like to do. Let me just go ahead and knit these last few stitches. And it looks like we would probably be casting off on the written pattern from the right side, but we're going to go ahead and cast off from the wrong side, from our 2 side here, just so I can go ahead and show you here in our allotted time. So like I say, there are dozens of different methods. This is going to be the first one I learned. So probably one of the most basic ones other people have learned as well. Basically, you knit the first stitch, and thank you for switching back the cameras. Sorry, I forgot to say anything there. I'll pull up a little bit more of my yarn here. It's a great big ball. I like pulling from the outside with Bernat Baby Velvet, but I know some people like to pull from the inside of the skein. It's whatever you like to do. The way it's wound, I think it is easier to pull from the outside. There we are. Okay, so to do this cast off, we're basically going to knit the first stitch, then knit the second stitch. Okay, let me try and pull this up right here so we can really see it. And then we are going to use our left needle here to pull that first knit stitch we made over the other stitch and off this needle. So it's a little different than all the other moves we've been making. We're going to get that needle under that stitch right there, and it helps if you kind of hold on to your working yarn there to anchor down that other one. You can, oops, takes a couple tries sometimes. It's a fiddly thing. It's not my favorite way to do it, but like I say, it is probably the most basic. You can just pull that right on over, and there we go. So now we're down to just one loop on that right needle again. So let's do that again. We're going to knit the next stitch, pull that off. Now we've got 2 loops on that needle, so we want to grab the one in back and just pull that off, but make sure to keep the most recent loop on that right needle. There we are. So we're back down to just 1 on there again. And that's just what we do across. Knit the next stitch, like so. Go in there like that. Grab the most recent one and pull it over and off. So you always end up with just that 1 loop left on your needle, like so. So then when you get to the end, all the way across there, which obviously is going to take some time, even with just 35 stitches, it'll take a little bit of time to get across there. You're going to have that 1 loop left on your needle, so you can just cut your yarn and send that end right through that loop, and that will secure it, and then you can weave in your ends. Weaving in ends on knitting is a little trickier, for me at least, because I am a crocheter first, but I like doing it from the wrong side. I would definitely recommend trying to weave in your ends, you know, under some of these loops back here. Just go back and forth. A nice long end is really recommended, especially with this type of yarn. It's grippy, so the edge shouldn't slip out too much, but at the same time, you can't really split the yarn because of the style. It's a chenille style yarn. Like I said, it's not really plied. So you'll want to make sure to leave a nice long end when you do weave in your ends with this yarn. So for those still looking for the pattern, I believe it's linked in the chat, right, Allie?
Yes, you should see a pattern PDF, Knit Waves blanket in the chat. And if you're still having trouble, just let us know and we'll be able to look your information up and we can email it to you directly. We know that some people might have trouble accessing the pattern PDF on iPad. So we'll take care of emailing that to you.
Okay. And if you that Allie was saying too, that this is going to be recorded, so it will be available afterwards. So if you weren't able to get the pattern in time and you want to rewatch it with the pattern in hand and your needles and yarn in hand, that will absolutely be available as well.
Awesome. And there's a question here about, do you know what size circulars you would need to use to knit a full-size blanket?
Oh, gosh.
For a full-size bed, I'm assuming.
Oh, the longest you can get. No, I would say, seriously, you know, gosh, if you're using a really bulky yarn, that could become a problem just because you're gonna have trouble getting the number of stitches to, you know, on there. There's so many variables. But yeah, honestly, if you're making a full-size blanket, I would find your favorite cable, I forgot to switch that one over. I was just knitting again. Yeah, find your favorite needle supplier, manufacturer, whoever it is, your favorite type, and just look for the longest cable you can get. I would look for at least 48 inches. Trying to think, I don't think I've ever actually knit a full-size blanket, because yeah, talk about a meditative, long-lasting project. That's going to take a while, at least for me. I am a slow knitter, though. I'll be the first to admit it, or at least a slower knitter than I am a crocheter. But yeah, I've knit baby blankets for sure, and you definitely want a nice long cable. The longer the better. And I would say, you know, and you don't have to worry about it being too long either. That's the nice thing. Since it's a blanket and you're working back and forth in rows, you don't have to worry about the cable being too long, because you're just going to be sliding it across. So that is a good tip too. You don't have to make sure that, you know, you're going to be able to join it or anything like that. So we're almost all the way across here for our casting off. Wasn't sure if we were going to make it in time, but I think we're just going to make it. So I can finish this off here.
We've had a couple questions about if you can crochet this blanket, and I just wanted to say there's absolutely tons of chevron blanket patterns.
And it would be lovely in this yarn too. You could do it in this yarn for sure. Like I was saying, you know, blanket patterns are great for experimenting with different yarns. So if you find a chevron blanket on your inspirations that you love, you know, feel free to make it in the Bernat Velvet, I think. I don't see why not. So yeah, I've got that last loop right there. I've worked all of them off. You can see here. I didn't do the garter stitch rows first, but you can see they're all cast off there. Got that last loop left on my hook. So then I would just go ahead and cut my yarn and then pull that loop up a little bit bigger there. So I can use my fingers because that's easiest. Pull that string right through the loop. That secures it. And just like that, I can weave in my ends. And that's all there is for the Knit Waves blanket. There's the front side. There we go. I think it's really cute. I love the way that the yarn over increases create almost an eyelet look. It's subtle, but it's there, and it just really emphasizes the pattern really beautifully. And I think this yarn really shows it off. Once again, for those who missed it, it's Bernat Baby Velvet. Really, really gorgeous stuff. This is the Misty Gray. I used the blue that is recommended in the pattern, but this is the Orchid Blush color. Really pretty. Like I say, definitely make this blanket your own. Use whatever colors of Bernat Baby Velvet or Red Heart with Love, or, you know, Peyton's Classic Wool, whatever yarn you love from your inspirations, use it on this pattern. I think it'll turn out really beautifully. You can see this got really, really gorgeous squish and fuzziness to this yarn. It really gives it a really luxe sort of high-end look, I think. Don't you think so?
I love it.
Yeah, me too. So yeah.
I was going to say, we agree. We absolutely agree over here from Michael's. Tamara, thank you so much for this class and walking us through everything. We can't wait to see what you guys do and with the next project. So thanks so much for everyone joining us. As a reminder, this class has been recorded. It'll be on michaels.com/classes tomorrow. And you can also look at all of our upcoming classes there and see what you want to take next. So crochet, knit, and we've got them on Thursdays and Saturdays now. So come back and join us. All of our classes are free. Tamara, we can't wait to have you again. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks for having me. It was real fun.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe.